Just when you think I could not get more disappointed in a video game, EA somehow manages to sink to even lower levels. But the mishandling of Plants vs. Zombies Replanted is truly on another level. Genuinely, how do you mess up an indie game from 2009 this badly? Genuinely, most of all that needed to be done has already been done in other ports. The Xbox and PS3 port, you can just take the controller controls from that, and also just spruce up the visuals to make them look more pleasing in 4K. The problem Popcap and EA ran into with that is that the original assets for the game just completely do not exist anymore. Now tell me, if you were in game development and come across this issue, how would you resolve it? Would you simply redraw the sprites? Would you hire the original artists to make the new assets? Or would you AI upscale them? This is EA we're talking about. We know what they did. Since this remaster was done over the course of 6 months, EA took the very fast, very cheap, and very lazy way of just AI upscaling the assets, and they do not look particularly good. These visual changes do not look like much, but when you're selling a remaster based off nostalgia from a game from 2009, the bar to strive for was to have the visuals be at least on par, if not exceeding, how you remember them. But the issues are not relegated to the visuals at all. There are plenty, and I mean plenty of glitches. A lot of these are fairly minor in the grand scheme of things, but they add up very, very quickly.
Please.
Wait, what are you doing?
What the hell?
It really goes to show how much EA cared about this product when you could just play the game a week early. This means players were able to find out all of the issues before the game even released properly. For the sake of brevity, I'm not going to go over every single glitch in the game. Also, a lot of those have been already patched out, but it's as egregious as the final boss will have the wrong attack indicator before doing an attack. I mean, the eyes will glow the wrong color before doing an ice attack. And this is the final boss. If they did not care about this fine detail with the final boss, what does that say about the rest of the game? But it gets worse, because of course it does. Because the soundtrack was also completely butchered in this new re-release. To explain to those who aren't familiar, the soundtrack in Plants vs. Zombies is supposed to start off with very little instruments at the very beginning to be a very mellow tone, and as the waves come through, more instruments are added to add intensity. This is what's referred to as a dynamic soundtrack. Well, in Replanted, there's no sort of dynamic soundtrack at all. It's all just the same instrument, same song all the way through. Now, the composer for the original Plants vs. Zombies game did not come back to this remaster in any capacity, which is fair enough considering there's not new content being added, so it's not like she needs to make new songs. But considering how obviously inexperienced this development team is, maybe they should have given her a call. The original Plants vs. Zombies composer would even call them out on Twitter, saying, "I created the music in Plants vs. Zombies with the specific intention of it being dynamic. Instruments gradually appear to match the intensity of zombies and prevent audio fatigue. Replanted level 1-1, all the drums right away. Years later plus bigger team equals dynamic audio gone." Now, I'm not going to be here to glaze the soundtrack and say it's peak or iconic, but I think that if you're going to port a game, you probably want the soundtrack intact. I'm not diminishing the soundtrack in any way, but I think the sound design overall is very strong in the original Plants vs. Zombies, which is also completely screwed up in the new version. So as far as I'm describing it, there seems to be really no reason that you should get this new version over the $5 original Game of the Year edition, which is still available on Steam. They haven't delisted it, which I guess good on EA for doing that, because it seems like when a remaster of any game comes out, the original's always delisted. The only issue with the Game of the Year edition is that it looks like pixelated garbage when you're playing on a monitor above 720p. I'm sure there are a bunch of mods that'll be able to up the resolution in a better way that the replanted version does. And it'll also take up a lot less hard drive space because the original Game of the Year edition is less than 100 megabytes, whereas the replanted version is over a megabyte. I'm not going to pretend that a megabyte is a lot of storage space in the big 2025, but I think it's really funny how the game is like 10 times bigger. Genuinely, what has happened to file space optimization in the tech industry? Optimization in general is just completely atrocious. Like, just open Task Manager and then open Discord and see how much your CPU is gonna spike.
Western game developer has been here. How can you tell, Master? 108 gigabytes for 3 maps.
So that essentially leaves the only real reason to get this new version of Plants vs. Zombies to be the multiplayer integration, which it was in the console ports, or you just really want to play it on your Nintendo Switch too, with the mouse mode. Well, both of those are completely fucked up anyways. The multiplayer mode, of course, falls victim to a litany of glitches, including not really being able to use a keyboard and mouse as one player and a controller as the other, although that may have been addressed in the day one patch. At least EA claimed to, but EA is claiming a lot of stuff that just is not true, like not using AI. As for the Switch 2 version of the game, the most completely baffling part about all of this is how they messed up mouse controls. You would think if anybody would know how to properly implement mouse controls, it would be game developers. Like, what are you using to develop the video games? Stone tablets? The issue present when you're using the Switch 2 Joy-Cons for mouse mode is that when you lift up the Switch 2 Joy-Con, the game reverts you back to the controller mode, not the mouse mode. And that is every single time you lift up the mouse. But what if you want to play it in handheld mode? Well, the touchscreen also leaves a lot to be desired. Instead of being able to drag the plants into their position, you have to tap it once and then tap again. How does this version do everything from every single version just a little bit worse? You're better off playing the mobile port than this. But it somehow gets even worse. It may not affect the gameplay, but it's just like, why would you do this? And I'm talking about the fabricated, allegedly, concept art that is included in the game. The original artist for Plants vs. Zombies, Rich Werner, actually called them out on Twitter for this, saying, "Let me put this on record. These early sketches from PVZ1 are all BS. It's funny too that Disco Zombie is part of it because we got a letter from MJ's estate to redo it. I redesigned it on the fly in one afternoon. No possibility of an early concept." And that is referring from the changes of the Disco Zombie originally looking more like Michael Jackson. I genuinely don't know why EA would do this. No one would buy the game based on just never before seen concept art. It's concept art, it's just something you can look at. The concept art itself is basically as worthwhile as a tweet, but why are you marketing your game including early sketches that did not even exist and are just made up for this remaster to sell as early concept art? This whole release is just baffling in general. And you know it's bad when you're catching flack from 2 different fronts from 2 different previous developers doing the art and the music. This whole release is a complete travesty, but on that note, I do completely hope that they fix it. Just fix all the glitches. I was really looking forward to this game, but I guess I will not be playing it at this moment. And I can only hope that maybe these will all get fixed in a patch one day. I do really hope. But as it looks right now, I may just have to deal with the pixel crunch of the Game of the Year edition, released in 2009. Or maybe if I'm feeling really quirky, I can just play the DS version. But isn't it really unfortunate I have to go all the way back to the DS to find a good version of Plants vs. Zombies? And not the newly released 4K remastered version? It is really unfortunate just how little effort it seems that these remasters get, especially when they're being ported from a different engine. Like, a lot of these just seem to be, oh yeah, put it in Unity and then it's all good. No, it's not going to be all good. It really reminds me of the Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD remaster. On the surface, a cult classic PS2 JRPG being released after the success of Persona 5 sounds like a license to print print money. But unfortunately, there are just a few small things holding it back. The main things are the audio quality, the hard cap to 30 frames per second, the lack of manual skill inheritance at launch, and lastly, the atmosphere just not hitting the same. For all of you whippersnappers out there used to be games that would be shipped on 2 discs, and usually this would be because the games are so big they would require the extra space. This usually had to do with games with a lots of music and a lots of cutscenes. Back in 2003, Nocturne was released on only 1 disc, and they achieved this by bit crunching the music to hell. But since this was being released in 2020, 17 years later, you would think that maybe Nocturne would be able to get the audio upgrade that it's been so desiring, but it didn't. It's still the same. You're getting PS2 level audio quality on your PS4 and now PS5. Another thing that was also neglected was the frame rate. Now, the issue is of just making Nocturne 60 FPS is that a lot of in-game logic is tied to the frame rate, and that is possibly the worst thing you could ever do to a game nowadays, but considering this was 2003, I'll let it slide. For example, in a game like the Spyro Reignited trilogy, there is some logic tied to the frame rate. So if you're playing Spyro on PC in 60 frames per second, then there are going to be some levels that just are not completable. So what you gotta do is go into the settings, bump it down to 30 FPS, and then you can complete the level. So it really is a pick your poison on whether or not you want the game to just be hard locked to 30 FPS or allow that freedom, but with more jank. Now, for as unfortunate of missed opportunities that these are, it isn't making the game worse like in the Plants vs. Zombies replanted game. However, when you look at the visuals, I'm just going to put this on screen. And let me ask you, which one is the HD version and which one is the original game from 2003? And editor, put in the Jeopardy theme for like 2 seconds with this image on screen. The top one is the original game from 2003 and the bottom one is the HD remaster. It looks genuinely unrendered. The one thing that makes this whole package way more offensive than the Plants vs. Zombies replanted game is that it was $50 at launch with a shit ton of DLC. Because of course, Sega of all companies was going to sell you DLC of a 17-year-old game. They were time traveling just to get to sell you DLC. Essentially, all these games coming out, it just reminds me, even if the original game is really good, it is 100% possible for the game developers that most likely were not even involved in the original game to just hastily and lazily slap it on the new systems. These remasters were not more of a revisiting of your childhood to these companies as more of just a way to promote the new and upcoming games coming out, like SMT5 and Plants vs. Zombies 3 for the like 5th time. I don't even know what's going on with Plants vs. Zombies 3. Like, it's been in open beta off and on for like 5 years now. How does it take that long to make a Plants vs. Zombies game? Popcap did it like in an indie studio with a box of scraps.